My name is Nick Giordano. I'm on the Esri Professional Services State and Local Government Consulting Team.
Hi, I'm Eric Apple. I manage our state and local government practice within Esri Professional Services.
I'd like to thank you guys all for stopping by today. We want to go over some of the best practices that we've seen for implementing ArcGIS Hub. Eric and I have worked closely with a lot of early adopters for ArcGIS Hub, and we've gathered and continue to gather these best practices that we've seen which make Hub implementation successful. I wanted to ask a few questions just to kind of gauge the room here. Who here is already using ArcGIS Hub by show of hands? All right. And who here is planning or interested in getting the Hub? Now keep your hand up if you are not government. Oh, wow, okay, that's good. And the rest of you, I'm assuming you're lost, but it's too late, the doors are closed, so we've already started.
In for the ride.
Yes. Here's a quick overview of what we're going to look at here today. For those of you that are newer to the Hub concept, I'm going to briefly touch on why the Hub concept was created and what the ArcGIS product is. We'll then dive into the best practices for Hub implementation, which we've broken into 5 categories. We have leadership and governance, strategy and workflows, technology and data, culture and training, and engagement. Then at the end, if we have some time, we'll go over the Esri Method. If you've stopped and had a chance to see the presentation for that, that's a Esri Professional Services model for GIS project implementation. And we'll look at how it regards to Hub. And then we'll have some time for discussion and Q&A at the end. So if you have a question during this, save it, and then we can discuss them at the end. We'll leave 15 minutes or so there. So first, let's look at why the Hub. The Hub is part of the next generation of internal collaboration and community outreach. It's a tool in this movement towards centralizing efforts in your organization to make progress on your most important issues. The communities have aspirations. They have aspirations to be safe, well-run, livable, healthy, prosperous, sustainable. And we all want to work towards these aspirations. These are the core values and goals for our organizations and communities. But just simply saying we need to be more livable is too vague to get the momentum needed to make change happen. At that point, that's just a dream or a wish, and we are not genies. This aspirations, they're not just dealt with by one department or one team. It's an effort of all of our teams working together towards many smaller goals that make up that aspiration. Breaking these aspirations down results in initiatives. Now, let's see. There we go. Initiatives such as improving emergency response times or using less energy, making parking easier. These are more manageable and more specific. You can track these and you can see if progress is being made as you're doing the initiative, although most of these are still up here complex enough that they can probably be broken down a few more levels into SMART type goals. So getting these initiatives together and getting them set as an organization-wide strategy is important for tackling your aspirations because that's going to allow everyone to work together towards a common goal using a common language. It unites your government or your organization and can allow for you to break internal silos down. Who here has run into problems with internal silos? All right, yeah, that should be everyone. If you don't, congratulations. Come talk to me after. I'd love to hear what you're doing with your finely tuned machine. We want to work, and then once you get those silos broken down, there's also the chance to work towards further collaboration with your community and your user bases. For example, nonprofits, community leaders, and neighborhood organizations, and academia. These are the resources that are criminally underutilized right now. Community engagement is coming through with periodic Facebook posts, maybe complaints through your local Facebook group, or a town hall meeting that could have had a better attendance. We are looking to find solutions for these challenges like siloing and community engagement because they're so prevalent. And that's because it's so tough to get the widespread organizational change needed to make this cohesion happen. It's very easy to blame Greg in IT for your last project not getting off the ground. Thanks, Greg. But in reality, we are all working within the confines of an already established organizational behavior and culture. And that behavior and culture can only be changed by small movements towards a more effective organization. The Hub serves as one of these steps, and continued utilization of the Hub and implementation of new initiatives can help bridge a fundamental gap in resource and effort alignment that we see in all these organizations and that we've all encountered here. Now, this next slide, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the trichotomy here, which is people, process, and technology. We like to bring this slide up because it's the first thing people think about when we talk about implementing ArcGIS Hub is the technology ArcGIS Hub itself. And that's important. However, it's also important to realize that a successful hub implementation is going to require your implementation efforts focus not only on the tech and the data, but also the people and the processes that will be impacted as a result. We've been looking at this implementation and we're evolving it to include people and process so this presentation is not going to be purely technical. You can build a great advanced technical system, but if you haven't taken into account the people who are to be impacted and the workflows that are to be impacted into consideration, you will not have near the success that you could have had with a more thorough plan. But while we're here, let's take a look at the technology itself. I realize that a lot of you are interested in the hub, and you may not be too familiar with it exactly, so I'm going to go over a quick look at the ArcGIS Hub and its features.
Yeah, and real quickly, have others attended some of the other technical sessions regarding ArcGIS Hub while you've been at the UC? Show of hands.
Okay, a few people.
Okay, a few.
This will be your quick jump start into ArcGIS Hub. I'm sure you've seen this slide during the plenary. ArcGIS Hub is Esri's newest product for community engagement and collaboration. It was born as a successor for open data, which is, as you know, where you put your data sets online and you let citizen volunteers and groups explore that data on their own. Open data is a key component of the hub as it is, but I'm sure you've seen an issue that this open data isn't really accessible to those without the technical knowledge needed to explore the data. The hub builds on the idea of open data by expanding out two-way engagement with the community through the concept of initiatives and community logins. This allows community members and partners to become a part of the discussion and the solution rather than just one-way communication from your organization or government to the community and your user base. That idea of an initiative is incredibly important. It's the fundamental vehicle within the hub. It's going to be able to incorporate that open data that professionals and data experts can play around with, but it also allows for different levels of engagement from all types of community members and organizations. People who are not as technically savvy can interact with surveys, charts, events, story maps, and crowdsourcing apps as just a few types of the many applications that you can customize and incorporate into your initiative. And they're all going to be centralized onto an initiative page within your hub. You can even set up initiative templates to stand up during frequent events of the same type. For example, the Department of Homeland Security used this platform to stand up an individual open data site for Hurricane Harvey data when Hurricane Harvey hit. And they have that template ready to stand up when these happen, and they put data and story maps that are specific to that event on there. You can form initiative teams just like any other groups on ArcGIS Online and even invite key community stakeholders to be a part of that team as well. You can secure that data and you can still allow for the community to be directly involved as a part of the initiative. We have reached a point where we now have the technology to allow for this new type of stronger community collaboration, and as a result, stronger internal collaboration as well. Many hub implementations see a huge benefit, and one of their main successes is easier access of information, of authoritative data between internal departments. So there's your quick little overview of ArcGIS Hub. Now we're going to turn back to the full triad here, people, process, and technology. Now those are very vague descriptions, kind of buzzwordy, so we tried to break these down to have a little more detail into what we like to refer to as the hub themes or the hub blueprint. This is 5 themes that we've made, each with 4 sub-themes that make up the major areas of a hub implementation, as you can see here. We've pulled these themes together with our professional services hub implementation team after reviewing several major smart city and GIS implementation models and maturity models. And we condensed the most frequently used and the most important themes that we saw reoccurring into what you see here on the screen. Everyone can take your pictures. If you're using Snapchat, be sure to use the filter. If you're going to get me in here, I prefer the dog one myself. Now, I'm going to kind of run over these top themes here, and I'm going to do a quick poll. If you see this theme and you say, this is my most pressing need, I want you to raise your hand as I go through these themes. So our 5 themes are leadership and governance. This is your most important theme for your hub implementation to work on. Please raise your hand for this. Okay. Pretty good governance here. Strategy and workflows. Okay. Technology and data. A little more there. Culture and training. Engagement. Okay. All right. Some people didn't raise for anything. You guys also come see me after. I'd love to hear what you guys are working on. The hub implementation is summed up in these 5 themes, and it's unique for everyone, but these are the general areas that we've seen during these. Let's look at the first theme, which is leadership and governance. Without this, of course, you will have anarchy. So we'll bring it down to executive leadership first. Executive leadership, these are the directors and the executives and the elected officials who are going to sponsor these hub projects. They're going to make the authoritative decisions on those key cross-cutting initiatives that you're going to have across your organization. And they're going to expect to stay informed on these initiatives and the status of the hub and its response from the public and from your stakeholders. As you see here, executive sponsorship is key. This is one of the things we look for when people come to us and say, we want to get a hub in place. If you don't have executive sponsorship, that's kind of a red flag. That's really an important part of this. They're going to be the ones who are going to be helping to drive this and drive the initiatives that go into the hub. So we want to see, are your leaders knowledgeable on the hub? Have they connected with other leaders who have put hubs in place? Esri can help on that. We can bring into the network of people who have put these hubs in place before. If, for example, you need to catch up your executives on the hub and what it can do, you're sold on it, maybe they need a little more information, you can have an executive workshop with them to go over the value that the hub would bring to the organization. And we want to really focus with the executives on quick wins. These elected officials especially work at a really different cadence than the government officials that are going to be lifelong government employees. They're going to be working at faster pace. Citizens have brought them in because they've made promises that need to be upheld, and they need to get them upheld fast or they're out. So you want to really get executive input on their key initiatives that they have made promises on and see if you can turn out quick wins for those. That's going to be really good for having those executives buy into this, and those quick wins are also going to be important for the public and for internal departments to buy into this as well. Hub's a great way to quickly respond to public issues that pop up. For example, the city of LA had on their hub an application called Streetwise. This was an application that showed the status of how clean the streets were, as like large items of trash on the curbs and such. And there was a press said that they weren't picking up garbage in low-income areas as much as they were in high-income areas. And they had the data, and they said, well, that's not true. We are. They took that data and they publicized it quickly. They stood up that initiative, and the places that were low-income areas where there was maybe a high level of trash on the streets, they fixed as well right after that. So it really showed quick engagement with the community through standing up this initiative. That's the kind of quick wins you can look for in response to public issues that pop up quickly. Once you've gotten this executive support in place, you need to take a look at the hub team in general. The team is not just going to be your GIS shop, it's going to be people across the organization. The team should naturally fit into your current organizational structure. This is an example that you see up here that I helped work on with a client. We'll start right from the left, your right, the core hub team. So it's important that this core hub team, I have here the hub project manager. We had one client call this the hub meister, as their affectionate nickname for that. The hub sponsor or the owner, the technical lead, an initiatives lead, a data lead, and a trading coordinator. It's important to have this mix of technical and business side in here, and you need to get perspectives from all the major functional areas that are going to be working on this hub or owning the hub. But you don't need to have this all right away. For example, when I was working through this, we noted places where they should have someone like a training coordinator, but they didn't have it just then, and that's okay. The hub is a system that's going to grow as you continue to put effort into it, and not all these positions are going to exist at first. And they could be one person doing multiple roles on this as well, especially for smaller hub implementations. Well, you have the organizational stakeholders. We've gone over executive sponsors and how important they are, and the sponsor of the hub itself. We also have internal champions in each of your departments. I have a slide that I'll get to that one later. But also representatives from some key departments such as PR and communications. Because of the external nature of these initiatives, you're really going to want to have them on board and ready to use their existing channels to publish initiatives and any press releases or pushes that you do through the hub. Also, design and branding. I found that a lot of teams that want to do this, I asked, do you have a UI, UX resource or a design resource available? And usually the answer is no, but they do have a department somewhere that has branding already made. And you don't want to be at a point where you're releasing this and then your design team somewhere in the organization is telling you to switch your royal blue to navy blue or whatever your official colors are. You want to have that stuff set beforehand, especially because you want to get a framework going when you're putting initiatives up, and you want to have design and branding already ready and tackled before when you're working with different teams throughout the organization.
Yeah, and I was going to say also, I mean, there's an expectation from the public when they engage with the government nowadays, or any of the entities who are implementing ArcGIS Hub, that it's going to be a streamlined experience. These aren't the types of apps that you're handing over to 5 people in the utility department or XYZ department. You definitely have to focus on the branding, focus on the PR and the outreach. So. Mm-hmm.
If you can get all that stuff set up beforehand, it'll make it a lot easier coming to people and saying, how do you want this set up, this initiative set up? And we have an initiative in our technology section. We can kind of go over initiative pages themselves. The technical team, of course, they should be looped in not only on the technical parts, but also the initiative needs. You have to have them available to support initiatives and the application creation process and give their expertise on that. You'll see here I have your technical lead, your data lead, GIS manager, also IT department resource if they are not connected in already, but they will be making decisions. It's important to have them looped in on this and on that team. And you'll see here on the right, you have your initiative teams. This is one of the most important concepts that I think we've developed through these best practices, is the idea that you're going to be reaching out to you need to have a repeatable structure to reach out to these teams. You have to know an exact framework for how these different groups can work with you to set up these initiatives. It's going to make it a lot easier to manage multiple initiatives at once, especially since all of these initiatives are going to have multiple departments incorporated in them, as well as probably key community stakeholders as well. And then there's always your Esri team, your account manager, solutions engineer, EAP technical advisor, and the ArcGIS Hub product team itself that will be able to be here to help support you and field questions as you undergo this hub implementation. The initiative teams here, they may be frequently run by what we like to call internal champions, which I had mentioned before. These are your connections across the organization. They are the ones who understand in the hub concept and they believe in the hub concept, and they're going to serve as your entry point for initiatives and your information source into their specific divisions and departments. They're going to enable this cross-departmental collaboration that's so important and that a lot of people will be missing at first, that you're going to be working towards. It's a crucial part of having successful cross-departmental initiatives. There's a couple things you should look for. You see I put a little World Cup guy here, and that's supposed to be England. I hear they're wearing their white kit today, so got that wrong. But that's my guess. You heard it here first. England's going to win. That's my that's my guess. But for our champion checklist, you got to think about people who are excited about the hub inherently, and people who can get other people excited about the hub too. People who are passionate about their initiatives and their organizational direction. They're ready for change, and they're ready to take action to make change. Being familiar with GIS and data science concepts is good, although they don't have to be a GIS professional. They could be a functional area leader or professional as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times there are people that are already within the organization. They've already been tasked by the mayor or someone in a leadership position. Hey, take this, make it successful, figure out this issue. And so finding those people, and sometimes they're not the people that you think they are, and sometimes the person who's anointed as that responsibility is not necessarily the champion who's really going to coffee, going to lunch, doing those connections in order to really pull off this bigger initiative that the organization is trying to tackle.
Right, yeah, and there's also, these new roles being made, like a head of sustainability or innovation.
Or resiliency.
And these are ones that, they're getting a foothold, and this is a good way for them to get their new initiatives out as well. Those are always great places to look for partnership opportunities. One big thing is you might be thinking, I don't really have internal champions, or at least not in every department that I'd want. They may not be apparent at first, but they will come out of the woodwork as you have those quick wins, those initiatives that everyone sees and maybe gets some press, good press. It gets a lot of traction within the internal organization. And people will start coming out the woodwork. You want to be able to foster interest from these people and keep them on board. Sign them on to that organizational stakeholder team and keep giving them updates on this. Even if they don't have an initiative right now, it's important to loop them in because these are going to be key to getting into these organizations, especially if they have authoritative data sources that you might need for another initiative. One group of people that should serve as your internal champions right from the start are your GIS professionals and user base. These are the experts that are going to help set up and incorporate the hub into your existing GIS systems and workflows, and they're going to need to be equipped with the resources to start enabling the users with the hub's features and other web GIS applications. They're going to be a huge part of the team. I'm sure a lot of you here are the GIS professionals that I'm talking about. And you're going to need a cooperation of them and the users to integrate the hub into your existing GIS workflows. For those of you who are not GIS professionals, it's important to remember to give GIS professionals a seat at the planning table, not just with the technical aspects, but they're going to be key consultative resources while planning the initiatives themselves. They're going to have the experience. They're going to know the current systems in place, and they're probably the ones who are most up to date with the most current Esri and GIS technology. For those of you who are GIS professionals, it's also, sorry, I skipped ahead here. It's also important to remember that you are going to have to change your workflow a little bit. You're going to have to start enabling organizational members rather than being a gatekeeper here. Traditionally, GIS tools have been very complicated. Only the professionals could do the work. If someone else had learned it, maybe they knew enough just to be dangerous, and you'd have to keep watch of that. But now with web GIS tools such as ArcGIS Online and free training courses through Esri's training, it's a much less steep learning curve to learn how to create web apps and maps and do basic spatial analytics. So your GIS shops are going to have to transform with this technology. Instead of gatekeeping the GIS usage, you want to modify that role to become an enabler and guide those in the organization who are looking to expand their GIS capabilities. This is going to help also free up your always in-demand GIS resources. I've never heard a GIS person say, we don't have enough to do, right? You always have a ton of requests coming in all the time, and a lot of them are duplicative work or simple GIS tasks and workflows. You want to free up those GIS professionals for modernizing the system and improving and getting onto the cutting-edge technology. So it's important to set up a system where you can enable functional groups to have those GIS capabilities. The GIS and IT, these are just two facets of the GIS bodies of users in your organization, and a vital step to accomplishing these leadership best practices that we've gone over is through your GIS governance. If you see up here, this is actually from Matt Lewin in Esri Canada. This is a GIS governance structure that he has put out, and you'll see that it's very similar to the structure I just laid out through these groups for the hub. They have the strategic advisory committee, they have a tech group, they have a data group, they have an initiative team group. That's a similar concept purposefully because implementing the hub is going to be like implementing GIS governance overall in your organization. It's just a vehicle to do that. And you want to be sure that your existing GIS organizational structure is ready to enable the hub, not delay it. I've done with some clients, I've sketched out, I've taken every GIS user in their organization and put them on an organizational chart because it reads like a map of the organization and it lets you see what departments have these licenses, what departments need this training. Having that mapped out, as we all know, maps are very important and help to boost that process along. And I've gotten a lot of positive results with laying all that out and kind of seeing how that's done. If you'd like to see, or if you'd like to learn more about kind of sketching through that process or see some examples, please let me know and I can show you that afterwards. So governance, that's key to setting up the hub, and a lack of governance is frequently going to be the reason, a key challenge for roadblocks and stuff getting in the way of your hub implementation. Like I said, be sure tomorrow at 1 if you want to learn more on this, check out this governance for GIS. Matt will be putting out a new governance model at that, so it should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, and it's pretty important for sustainability over time. We've seen quite a few hub, what I'd call sort of one-hit wonders. They were focused around one specific initiative, but they didn't make it a part of the institution. They didn't create that momentum. So those virtual teams that came together that maybe focused on one initiative, this month, they did some great work, but they didn't have a way to carry that forward. And I think that's what we're trying to articulate here through both governance and the hub blueprint here is how do you systematically continue to do that for the rest of the year and years to come.
Mm-hmm. We'll move into our strategies and workflows section here behind your hub implementation. So the first category here is strategic alignment. It's meaning your organization has accepted a shared set of initiatives across all of the groups that may be traditionally siloed. Ensuring you have this alignment is good practice in general, but it is essential for the continuous improvement that you're going for with the hub implementation. A frequent problem is that people within the organization are working on the same exact issues across the organization, but they're not communicating. There's no strong communication between them, and they duplicate efforts as a result. Everyone has less success when that happens. We've seen groups that are historically aren't as good about sharing data and resources with each other are actually more willing to share to a common cause, such as a cross-departmental initiative. This has been, if you ask someone, hey, share all this data with me, they'll say, we have other stuff to do. But if you have a shared initiative between you, you're like, let's share data for this common purpose, then you can build that network. And after you've done that initiative, you still have that network. They're going to be more willing to share in the future and strengthen that connection and what they've been sharing in that new collaborative relationship. You see here we have I skipped through. You see here we have a chart, that kind of lays out, this was also done by Esri Canada, it kind of lays out how people decided on some of these cross-cutting strategic goals. And you see they kind of put it by high risk and low risk. The bubbles is how much it's going to cost, I believe, in the middle. And the other side, the y-axis, is low value, high value. And you can see they found out what their quick wins are just by mapping this out. And of course, there's many other strategic planning tools that you can use to accomplish this. If you don't have anyone here have an organization that really doesn't have any initiatives spelled out right now? Okay, yeah, it happens. And you probably do have somewhere initiatives that everyone is working on. They just haven't been identified across the whole organization. For example, here's the American Mayor Survey, some of the top problems that came up, traffic and parking, of course, always being number one. Once you have those strategies in place and you've found those, which it's also, if you don't have those, it's important to get your executives on board, maybe have some workshops or some training sessions to kind of draw those out before you dive into the hub. But once you have that strategy in place, it's time to look at the priorities that you've made through the lens of location. We like to call this a location value assessment as an activity. This can be a meeting or a workshop or a set of meetings where you look at your prioritized initiatives and you start to think about how you can use spatial analysis and GIS technology within those initiatives. This is how you jump that gap from we have these ideas for these initiatives to having a hub initiative page set up with a set of apps ready to share to stakeholders in the public. The initiative characteristics here, this is going to be a big brainstorming session, these workshops. It's not the time to bring your weak hands, it's not possibles. This is the time to diverge on your ideas and think past the boundaries that you guys have set for yourself. There's going to be a time afterwards where you can converge back in and limit them into your top priorities. So it's important to keep those principles of divergent thinking or brainstorming in mind. Defer your judgment. You want to foster psychological safety within that, and you want to make sure that you're not saying, that's a bad idea, that won't work. That's the kind of stuff that will physically stop people from generating new ideas. It actually your prefrontal cortex starts to regulate itself. Even if you see someone else get shut down in the room, someone shuts someone else in the room, everyone in the room is now going to be on a higher guard, and that's actually going to stop the flow of new ideas. That's an important principle to remember this, along with going for quantity and making connections to past ideas within that. And also seeking novelty. Alex Osborne, the creator of the principles for divergent thinking, said it's easier to tame a wild idea than to invigorate a weak one. So there's some stuff to keep in mind when you're brainstorming through that process. You also see that afterwards you can converge when the time comes, and you can look at where your organization's priorities are and your current inventory and available resources, and limit your ideas in afterwards. Just to keep those separate. Hopefully by the end of your LVA, which you've generated a lot of these lists of characteristics here, you will have a list of solid, location-enabled initiatives that are ready to be created in your hub. And you also have a repeatable process that you can do whenever a new department is interested in the hub and wants to get an initiative on the system. You can run them through the LVA process. These GIS patterns of use are very helpful once you have your initiatives. I'm sure you've seen these. Esri generated 9 patterns of use, and a lot of the times your initiatives are going to have multiple of these at once. They can be combined, and they all have different apps associated with them. I'm sure you guys will be using a lot to have the constituent engagement for hubs, but there's also a lot of these, and they, design planning has geodesign, and analytics as insights. They're all connected into those. That's a good way to start to break down your initiatives into specific apps. Speaking of initiatives, let's explore kind of what the initiative is comprised of. There's the team of the initiative, like we had mentioned before, but there's also the content that goes into it. There's the engagement that comes as a result of it, and then there's dashboards and KPIs so you can track how your initiative is doing. Your regular open data site can enable initiatives, but they will usually be department siloed or independent efforts by a community member or a group using your data as the input. This turns on the fire hose of the initiative is going to take that fire hose of information that is open data and concentrate it into one thing. This framework here, as you see, we can kind of step through this. This is what I've seen as a repeatable framework for initiatives. This is really important to get down, because if you're going to be running through this with departments time and time again, you're going to want something that's easy to manage. So we've kind of broken down to initiative qualification and selection, initiative planning, initiative creation, initiative approval and launch, and then post-launch processes such as reviewing the process in general and seeing what you can improve next time, and also change management. How are people going to come to you with a small change or maybe a total overhaul? How are you going to handle that? This framework, if you can get this down on paper and run through this, you will find a lot of success when working with departments on your different initiatives. Part of initiatives and knowing how you can be successful is your performance tracking, your KPIs and your metrics. It could be easy to put a lot of work in a project like this and then have trouble quantifying the impact that it's actually had on the organization and the public. I'm sure a lot of us have run into this before. This is why having those metrics to track from the start is such a powerful tool with the hub. You'll notice that when you're doing your location value assessment, metrics was mentioned as one of the items to brainstorm. This is important because it relates the data that you can show to the outcomes of when you set up this initiative. Are you making progress? People can see past a page filled with buzzwords on how the initiative is going, but metrics make the progress very easy to display. There's those metrics for the initiatives. There's also metrics for the hub itself, the effectiveness of the system. This is going to be big for executive stakeholders and for ensuring that the system has a lot of support as it grows throughout the organization. For example, the city of Brampton set up an open data site, and they said in their first year of use, they saved 588 hours of staff time by having people not have to search for duplicative resources. They also started with 15 data sets and worked up to 300 now to date. These are the real changes that you can start tracking right now. You don't even need to have the hub implemented yet. You can start to track like how much data is available online and how much hours are used with duplicative resources even before you start to put the system in place. Those qualitative and quantitative metrics are going to be able to help you see the current state of your organization and how the hub has changed it. We went over tech a little bit. Let's look at some of the best practices on implementing technology as it relates to your ArcGIS environment. First is your GIS infrastructure. Like having a map of your organization and the people in it, your GIS users, understanding your GIS infrastructure and having a map of that is important as well, and it's going to make it much easier for you to interact with your organization and with Esri when you're trying to implement this technology. If you're planning on putting this in place, having that big picture view is going to make the process much easier. The hub is going to sit on your existing GIS infrastructure or infrastructure that you'll get as a result. And your initiatives are going to be enabled by the systems that you have connected into your GIS infrastructure, like 311 systems. And tech is changing. You need to be ready for capacity as these initiatives become more popular internally and externally. For example, you may want to move your data to ArcGIS Online to make it more accessible if you find that a lot of internal departments want to go to a single place or a single organization for that. Or you can work to connect your systems together, which portal technology is advancing all the time, and it's working towards making it easier for internal organizations to be connected together. As you build externally, people might want the same capabilities inward as you do have externally, so that's where kind of ArcGIS Sites comes in. There's also ArcGIS Monitor for monitoring the healthier system overall. So these are some of the applications to keep in mind when you're looking at your GIS infrastructure.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think folks are looking for the silver bullet for, okay, I've got ArcGIS Hub, what does that mean? I need an exact specification for your architecture. And I sort of see it as you work through each initiative, you are architecting for that initiative, and the team, the virtual team that Nick was mentioning, they're learning from that. So in the first initiative, maybe the mayor does a press conference and the local news picks up on one of your story maps, and then all of a sudden you learn very quickly that, oh, I might need to move my data over to ArcGIS Online, I might need to do some things for scaling, et cetera. So it's sort of that iterative cycle, learning how to both monitor your architecture but also plan for the next initiative. So we see that quite a lot as far as architecture. And again, a lot of times it resides on data that you might already be sharing. A lot of times agencies are already sharing their data. It's a matter of quickly plugging that in and then making some judgment calls as to where data is going to reside in some of these other situations.
Exactly, and talking about data is one of the largest stumbling blocks that I've seen during hub implementations and drives for new initiatives. People have these ideas and they know the data exists somewhere, but once again, they don't have a map of the data. They don't have an inventory of the data started. It's very important to inventory that data and curate it and make sure you know who is the data stewards for this. Do we have them? Should we assign them? These kind of things are going to make it much, much easier when you're working with departments to get their initiatives stood up, because they'll know what resources they have available. I've been in parts where people say, oh, we don't have the resource available, and you Google it, and you can actually find it online, but internally they don't know that they have these available to them. So having that map is important.
Yeah, we see it so many times when they tackle an initiative. Initiative implies that a lot of times it's cross-cutting. It requires multiple departments to work together, external agencies, and a lot of times there's this awareness of, okay, for this initiative we need this data, and then there's like, oh, I didn't know you had that data. I didn't know you had that data. So what Nick mentioned earlier is a lot of times Hub opens up conversations internal to the organization as to better sharing of data between the different departments, but the initiative is sort of what initially drives that. So.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the data is important when you're brainstorming these applications. It's when you're looking at your applications that you want, you'll go through that process in the LVA, you'll be able to kind of draw those out. You should also look at your existing applications and see if you can modernize those and incorporate those into the hub, especially the popular ones. That'll be good to attract people into the site, and then they'll be able to explore the hub more as they get those. You can see here's a couple initiatives that we've seen used commonly through hub. Of course, there's Operations Dashboard. This one's from the city of Zwolle for their air quality and climate data crowdsourcing initiative, and we have story maps, web app builders. This over here is South Bend, Indiana had a vacant lots initiative, and they actually put a survey 123 out that asked people, if you see a vacant lot that we don't have, put it into the system. This is crowdsourcing data from the citizens is one of the least used ways of community engagement that governments use today. So it's really important to get these kind of tools going that you can interact with the citizens with, and you can get this data from them that you wouldn't normally receive. All of these applications, of course, will go into your destination website. This is kind of, we were talking about the design process earlier. This is really where streamlining that design process would be helpful. When you're standing up initiative pages, if you can have a framework, such as this framework that we use here already set up, it's going to make it a lot easier when you're coming to these departments and they might not know exactly what they want as far design-wise, but they know what kind of content they want. It'll help them give them a structure to put that in. And of course, you can do different designs as well. We've seen some really creative designs. I have a few examples here. We have the Northwest Resiliency Park Initiative, which has a great site, and also Brampton, Canada's GeoHub, which is a very different looking site than a lot of the hubs, and we always gush about it. It's a great example of the customization that you can use within the ArcGIS Hub sites framework.
And the branding.
Yeah, exactly. You can match it to your own branding very well. I know we're running a little short in time here, so I'm gonna get through the culture and training section. If there's anything that I missed, feel free to jump around afterwards and you can talk about it. But the main elements of culture and training are thinking spatially, cultivating a culture of innovation, cultivating your enterprise collaboration, and then training and education. Thinking spatially, of course, is very important, especially with a lot of people not even knowing what GIS is within the organization. You need to introduce that and spatial thinking to that wider audience. And this can be done through short videos, short workshops. You can do that through lunch and learn activities. Those are really good forums for your GIS user group. And if your executives need help incorporating GIS and spatial thinking into their workflows, having executive workshops with them to show the benefits of GIS is a great activity you can do to get them on board. This is our Esri spatial problem-solving framework there. That's an easy way to solve up looking at problems through a spatial lens. There's also the culture of innovation. It's really hard to have a very innovative website if you are very risk averse. And if your organization isn't ready to take risks and isn't ready to possibly make mistakes, isn't ready to innovate and learn as a result. These are 8 elements that I've seen here. This is from Andrew Corbett. I saw this in a Harvard Business Review article about they did a lot of research onto the types of things that you should be looking for if you're trying to foster innovation within your whole organization. And they talk about, you want these rock stars who can generate innovation. You probably already have them. It might just be that the system around them isn't allowing them to get that innovation out. That's always an important part to think about, how you're allowing these new ideas to bubble up and how you can utilize them in your current processes. For enterprise collaboration, it's important. I've hit this time and time again, but that's because this is one of the major components of the hub, is you're going to allow these internal departments to collaborate more. You're going to be able to connect all the relevant departments with the initiative and its content. And we've seen a lot of times that sometimes there'll be one major department that isn't on board, and that could throw off the whole initiative because they have maybe a key data set or an authoritative data set that you need to complete the initiative. So bringing all of them on board, and especially starting initiatives that have all of the departments very enthusiastic and supportive about the initiative is a good idea. The collaboration will spread from there. If they have a lot of success, it could spread through envy.
Yeah, and that's also why having the executive leadership on board, they can sometimes wield a heavy stick.
Exactly. Voluntel them to.
Yeah, voluntel.
To do it. And that can also be collaborating with external resources as well. As far as training, it's really important to, I'm sure there's a lot of training presentations that you've seen during UC here today, but it's really important to get training to these people. It's easier to learn GIS now with WebGIS, but there's still a learning curve in that, and you need to be able to leverage the resources you have available. There's self-paced, instructor-led resources, there's free Esri resources and MOOCs that you can pass out links to, or maybe even just making a small groups of power users and having them trained on the latest technology as well. You just want to make sure to meet both your short-term needs for the hub and want to look at your long-term vision for training and getting everyone up to speed.
Yeah, and as you work through the cycles of doing these initiatives one after the other, there is definitely a teach-to-fish methodology that folks try to use. So there is the sort of off-the-shelf training, and Esri, we can help. We have training coordinators, and we've created plans for folks, but most effective we see is the GIS professionals are in there, they're at the seat of the table, and they are helping enable others. So that they've totally been the most successful doing that.
For sure. And lastly, we'll look at the engagement here. So we've broken it down into community and press, tech sector and business community collaboration, NGO and non-profit collaboration, and then academia partnerships. With community and press, it's very important that you can utilize these community members as volunteers. There's the Bloomberg Mayor Survey said city employees were selected as one of the top resources by 51% of respondents, or 56%, and residents came in a close second at 51% on generating new ideas for the government. You got to make sure that both of these groups are enabled internally and externally. And these hub tools are going to allow you to utilize community members in your initiatives, even adding them as contributors to your teams, such as you saw with South Bend and their vacant lot site initiative. The ability to let citizens access cities' data and visualize why decisions made is very powerful. It can reduce misinformation. It can visualize evidence for your policy making and allow for citizen analysis so they can bring new ideas in case something was missed or maybe they have a better option.
Yeah, and as citizens, I mean, I know a lot of the agencies, they've created open data and they check the box, we're done, right? I mean, citizens, they assume are going to go home after a hard day of work, sit on the couch and, oh, I think I'll browse the city's open data portal. That's part of the reason the hub was created. It was to give this data purpose. It was to allow the city to work on, cities and counties and other agencies to work on these initiatives. So.
And the independent sector they estimated the volunteer hour value in 2018, and that's $24.69 an hour for each volunteer that you can get to do work. So that's also a cost savings metric that you can put in there too. And I know we could all use some spare budget, and we don't actually have the budget to bring on more people. This is a great way to get some work done through volunteer actions. It's also important to integrate the hub into your existing engagement patterns and digital strategy. Use those popular apps and integrate the hub into those. Know how to target the audience. Where are they now? Are they all in Nextdoor? Are they all on a certain Facebook group? Where does the misinformation occur that you can correct with the hub? You also want to work with your local press to understand the hub systems. You should actually try and have a workshop with them and bring them on so they can look at this data and they can see how to use the data and the hub system. And you should also, at the same time, have a way to counter against negative feedback, communicate value of the system instead of defending costs that you've done with your policies. For the business and tech community, one major thing that we've seen is economic development. We have an economic development initiative within the hub, and this is a huge boon for developers that are looking to move into the communities, and that's always been a top priority that we've seen for economic development. You can promote this data and economic development initiatives with your local businesses and your local developers. Connect with your local business associations and chamber of commerce. You can create information products with this data to help spur new developments and reach out to small businesses to show them the data that they can use. They can see with business analysts how percentage of coffee drinkers by zip code, right? You can give them access to this kind of data or work with them on this, and it would be it's a win-win for everyone. They start connecting with the city more. You can give them some information that they can use. For NGOs and nonprofits, it's important to empower your existing connections and make note of your existing connections so you can see who could be useful and who can have connections during certain initiatives, and also foster new nonprofits. I think it's a shame that there's a lot of nonprofits in the areas that are working on initiatives that the city government's also working on. They just haven't matched their resources up, and the hub's a great way to be able to do that. You can conduct seminars with them, open data seminars, and reach them in and teach them how to use the hub as well, just like the press. Or have technology enablement sessions, teach them how to make story maps and teach them how to use these web apps to get their information across and how their variables across as well. And as far as the academic community, there's no shortage of professors that are looking for real-world projects to put on their syllabi so their students can do it. It's great. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a win-win-win. Students get real-world experience. Professors get an impactful project that they can add into their syllabus. And then also, you get work done and also get to educate these young leaders who can then stay in your community and help and stay on board. And you can grow them as new future community leaders. So coordinate with those university groups, especially if you have maybe a crowdsourcing event that has a lot of work to be done. There's always good service groups and other groups at universities that you can utilize to get those large crowdsourcing efforts done. What I did, and you can also, we can get this slide out to you. When I was looking through these with certain clients, we'll go through this Hub Blueprint Scorecard, and we'll have everyone we'll say on the count of 5, 1 through 5, 5 being the highest, show how ready you think you are in each of these categories. And we'd go through them, and it's a great way to see the places that you should focus your effort as you're putting the Hub Blueprint in. Almost universally, engagement is pretty low scores. That's what the Hub's aiming to do, and it's one of the most challenging parts right now, which is why you're implementing the Hub. But also, we've seen that a lot of people realize that their technology data is actually pretty strong, but their training and culture, their training education might not be as strong. There's areas that they can improve on, and this is a great way to start to chart the activities that you should do as you're implementing your Hub. If you haven't seen it, we have the Esri Method, which is our Esri Professional Services implementation pattern. It starts with scoping out your vision and then making your roadmap, inventorying your current business process and technology and workforce capabilities, and seeing what the gap analysis is between those and the vision and the goals that you have. And then you run through this initiative cycle, plan, implement, operate, and then review. There is other presentations on Esri Method, and I believe those resources are going to be available as well.
Tomorrow afternoon, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and we can get you that information if you're looking for that. Lastly, before we do Q&A, there's also tomorrow a Getting Started with Open Data session. And you can head over to the ArcGIS Hub and Open Data Expo area anytime today for the rest of the day and tomorrow if you're looking for more information on Hub as well. So I'd like to open it up. We have a few minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, please let me know and we can have a little discussion here. Yes.
Is the data always stored centrally, or can it point to data stored on other people's servers?
We've seen both.
Both.
Yeah, for example, like LA GeoHub uses LA County data point to that, but you can have it all centrally as well. And we've seen people want to move it centrally, but if someone doesn't want to share their data, move it onto your system, you can point to it as well. Yeah. Yes.
So where do I go to start building the hubs? Go through ArcGIS Online or through our portal?
Yeah, to start building the hub site, you can go through to get familiar with the tools. If you have ArcGIS Online, you can look at enable your open data, and you can start to see the sites editor on there. And then once you can connect with your Esri team on getting the hub product itself, and that's going to be the events and the community profiles associated with the hub and the templatized initiatives as well. But open data, if you go to ArcGIS Open Data or Hub, I believe it's hub.arcgis.com, that'll be a good place to start. It'll give you some directions on how to start. Anything else? Yes. Right, yeah, so you might have seen sites. Sites was due to the fact that a lot of people saw Hub and they said, well, this is great, but I don't have necessarily a forward-facing initiative, but I want to use this for my internal capabilities in my portal, and that's where sites came out of. So it's similar mechanics. It's used for more internal-facing.
Yeah, exactly. Sites is more for internal-facing. Hub is more for community engagement and working on initiatives that are within the community.
Sites is more about the data in an internal. It's got more roles and security attached to it.
Right, yeah, right. You can make more data available since it is internal facing. So it focuses on that, but you can also still put in web apps and just like the initiative sites that we've seen.
Yeah, and part of sites was created because sometimes with organizations you have tons of users, groups, et cetera, and things can get a bit unwieldy, and so different departments wanted to be able to have their own site where they could curate their own content and their own stories, et cetera. So, but it is more for the internal purposes. Other questions?
All right, feel free to come up afterwards if you have some questions. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.